Hi everyone, welcome to Book Club. I'm back this week, much thanks to Quinn last week for filling in while I was out. I hope you guys are enjoying reading the book as much as I am. We're continuing on in Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Excellent book. We got to read a really interesting section this week, and we're going to talk about it today. First off, if you were part of Space Science earlier, then you know that we're doing a Spirit Week this week. All the teachers and we are dressing up today. Today's theme is sports teams. You can wear your jerseys and whatnot. I'm wearing my Seattle Seahawks football shirt and my Seattle Mariners baseball cap. I'm a fan of baseball and football. Neither of which Oregon has a professional team in, so we have to cheer for our neighbors to the north in Seattle. We're going to be doing Spirit Week stuff all week, so we're having a little bit of fun with it. Hi to Jordan, who's here today, and hi to Evan and Aubrey and Ian, everyone that's saying hi in the Q&A box. Glad you guys are here to discuss the book. Hi to Benjamin. Hi to Alan. Ian's already jumping in. Ian's already talking about what happened in the book this week. Well, and yeah, Ian's got viewpoints. I love it. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So as always, if you have any questions or you want to share a viewpoint on something, go to the Q&A box down there at the bottom of your screen and you can type in your question there. I'm going to be asking you some questions about what we read this week. Getting your viewpoints or what you think about it. So you can think about that and you can write your answer there in the Q&A box and I'll read it to the rest of the class. Hi, April. Alan says, I got excited and I finished the book. All right, I don't blame you. Just try not to spoil anything that happens after the section that we read. Hi, Shanna. Glad you're here. You've not missed anything yet. We're just getting started. So great. Now, before we get into talking about the book today, one of our goals for our book club, for reading this book and talking about this book is, if you remember, when we started, we had 3 goals. One of them was to read a great book and have fun, but another one was to improve our reading comprehension, improve how well we understand what we're reading. So I wanted to talk about that with all of you a little bit today. Okay, so one of the main things students run into when they are reading is like words or terms in a book that they don't understand. You're reading along and you just see a word you've never seen before. This happens to me all the time. I'm reading like a science fiction fantasy book right now in my free time for fun. And this book is actually written at a pretty high level. There are tons of terms in this book that I've never seen before. When you're reading along and you see a word that you've never seen before, or maybe you have seen it before and you kind of forget what it means or you're not sure, there are a few different strategies that people teach about what you should do. The problem with seeing a word that you don't understand in a book is that it can mess up your own understanding. If you don't understand one word in a sentence, that whole sentence can be more difficult to understand, right? So one of the strategies that is taught in many schools is called context clues. Context is like the words around the word that you don't understand. If you see a whole sentence and there's one word in the sentence that you don't know, sometimes you can guess. You can try to figure out what that word means based on the words around it. The problem with context clues is that your guess might not be right. I had a student once that we were reading a book about, I think it was My Side of the Mountain, if any of you have read that. It's about a boy who decides that he wants to go out and live in the woods. He finds a tree. He decides he's going to live inside this tree. He kind of gets it hollowed out. It's big enough. He's going to make like a bed inside this tree, and that's going to be his house. It says in the book that he makes his bed out of ash. Well, my student read that sentence and she guessed, oh, okay, so he's made a fire. The fire burned down to ash and he made the bed out of that. Can anybody in the Q&A box tell me why that does or doesn't make sense? Feel free to jump in there. And if you think you understand what actually happened there, you can jump in the Q&A box and write that too. But using context clues, my student thought, I understand, I think, what's going on here. The person made a fire and then they're using the ash to make a bed. Paige says, because beds are solid. Yes, but ashes from a fireplace usually aren't. They're very soft and crumbly. They're not very solid. So if you thought somebody made a bed out of ashes, it doesn't really make sense, right? The context clues make it seem like, because he was out in the wilderness, campfires, kind of makes sense. But here's the problem. There's usually a better strategy. When you see a word or something you don't understand in a book, you can go use a dictionary. There are still around, you don't see them as often anymore, but there are paper dictionaries that are big books that are just full of what words mean. There are also online dictionaries that are free. You can go find out what a word means, and you can look down through all the definitions and spot the one that actually fits there. If you, Evan is already jumping in here with the right guess. Yes, an ash is also a type of tree. Just like you have maple trees and oak trees and fir trees, there's tons of types of trees. The ash tree is a type of tree. So when this person in the book makes a bed out of ash, what it was actually saying was wood from the ash tree. So today, I wanted to show you all an online dictionary if you've never used one before and how to use it so we can start practicing with that. So at the end of the last section we read and at the start of this one, the book starts talking a little bit about genetics and genes. And some of us reading this, we may never have run into these words before. So I wanted to show you something we could do to make it make sense. So this is the Longman Dictionary. This is just one free dictionary that you can find online. There's a lot, but this one is meant for, students, more like beginners in the English language. This is meant for people that don't have huge vocabularies already, which is great. Because sometimes if you use a really advanced dictionary that's meant for like really high level readers, you'll run into the problem of the dictionary thinks you already know a lot and they'll use a lot more words you don't know. So the Longman is a learner dictionary. It's meant for people that are, they're reading, they're trying to figure things out. And there are several other beginner or learner dictionaries that you can find online. So in Wonder, when it's talking about genes, we can type the word in, gene. And there's usually, on a lot of dictionaries, there's a lot of symbols and things that are next to the word here in red at the top. There are funny symbols that are supposed to help you pronounce the word correctly. There's other stuff. We're going to ignore a lot of that for now. We're not going to get into all that. What we are going to read, though, is just the definition of the word gene. A part of a cell in a living thing that controls what it looks like, how it grows, and how it develops. People get their genes from their parents. So if you've never seen this word before, that actually makes a lot of sense. At the beginning of this section of the book, genetics is the subject of genes. These parts of our cells, these parts of our bodies that tell our body how to grow and what it's going to look like and how to develop. So at the end of the last section, Genetics 101, Via is talking, and she talks in here about how Augie and her, they got a certain gene from their parents. Augie got this gene from both parents because it gets passed down to you when you're born. And that's what makes Augie, that's a big part of why he looks the way he does. Well, if we'd never seen that word before, when V is talking about it here, we could look in the dictionary and it says a part of a cell in a living thing that controls what it looks like, how it grows, and how it develops. People get their genes from their parents. And there's a lot more, you know, you could learn about this. You could go even look at like Google Images and look at pictures of it. But I just wanted to bring this up as something that we could start to do. It's actually something that I want everybody at home to work on this next week as we read the next section of the book. Is I want you to sort of experiment with this idea. If you've never used a dictionary before, find a really simple one. You can look online for learner's dictionary, student dictionary, or like child dictionary. Don't worry, I know we're not all little kids here. But even grown-ups will use simple or like children's dictionaries if we want to know what something means, but we don't want to get a lot of other confusing words. Sometimes you can't find a word anywhere but a really difficult high-level dictionary. But this week, part of the assignment is going to be, let's just start looking at some dictionaries and sort of getting curious, finding out what's in the dictionary. Read your assignment and wonder, and when you see a word that you don't know what it means, just get curious. Look in an online dictionary, see if there's a good definition there that you can find out more about what that word means. And then next week, we'll talk more about learning words and how we can increase our vocabularies with that. Sound good? Okay. If you guys have any questions about that, you can ask me in the Q&A box. And yeah, we'll keep on going. All right. So when I ask you guys a question, I know it takes you often a minute or two to type your answers in. So I'll often keep on talking. So this isn't just quiet while I ask the question. So my first question for you all is, what did you think about what happened this week in the book? And more specifically, did anybody have any questions about when V is talking about the Punnett square or genetics or any of the medical terms? Did anybody have any questions about that or anything that they were confused about or anything that they would like to talk about? If that was confusing or didn't make sense to anybody, we could take a few minutes and try to sort that out because I want to make sure that we're all enjoying the book and totally understanding it. So just let me know if you had any questions about that. Aubrey says, I love it. Good. Yeah, this is a great book, so I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Jordan's asking about what page we were supposed to read to. Jordan, we'll talk about that at the end of the class so that everybody can have time to write it down and bookmark it or whatever. Okay, good. So if you guys have any questions about the genetic stuff, just let me know. Yeah, so this section of the book, we start out, actually last week, we started reading Via's section of the book. And this week we continued to read through Via's section. And one of the things I love about this book is the different viewpoints. A lot of times a book will just be told from one person's viewpoint through the whole book. But in Wonder, the book is broken into sections where we get to see different people's viewpoints about what's going on. The whole first section of the book is told from Augie's viewpoint, and he goes through a few things that you just get to see his side of the story or what happened with him. Now in Via's part, we kind of go back and we see some of those same events from somebody else's viewpoint. This is one thing that authors do sometimes to kind of give it a more rich experience. It's kind of like real life, where we might have our own viewpoint on something, but it's really interesting to get a walk in somebody else's shoes for a minute and see what things are like from their viewpoint. So back in the last section, one of the major events that happens in this book is what happens on Halloween. So before Halloween, Augie's mom is making him a Star Wars costume of Boba Fett, and she spends a lot of time on it. She spends like 2 weeks making this Halloween costume. And at the last minute, when Augie is headed out the door to school that day, he decides to change into a different costume, and he wears this like black cloak with this like scary face. I don't know if any of you knew the movie that he was referring to, but it's from an old scary movie called Scream where the character in that movie has this long ghost face. So Augie is dressed up as that character. You could go look on Google Images probably for a picture of that if you needed to see. But if you don't mind, it's just like a black cloak with this like long ghost face. So he had told everybody at school that he was going to be dressed up as the Star Wars character. So when he actually went to school dressed up in this black cloak and this ghost face, nobody knew who he was. We get to see from Augie's viewpoint as he overhears people talking about him because they don't even realize that it's Augie in the room. He's kind of, they say some hurtful things. He goes home, and we now in the section with Via, we go back and we see this same day from her viewpoint. What did you guys think about that? What was interesting about Via's experience of that day? Did anybody find it interesting to kind of see what Augie was focused on Halloween, and then what Via was focused on? Some of the things that Augie had his attention on, or what he was thinking about, was not what Via had her attention on and what she was thinking about. If anybody has any thoughts on that, I would love to. Yes, Ian calls it the bleeding scream. Yeah. I remember from when I was younger, I saw some of the same Halloween costume. It was kind of the mask. It could have like some pretend red blood go through it. So that's probably what it's referring to. April says, I did not read any of it yet. That's fine. April, if you want to stick around and participate anyway, it's totally fine. But we'll let you know what page we're reading up to for next week. So hopefully you'll be able to catch up and participate with us. So yeah, if anybody has a viewpoint on what happened with Via, specifically, what did she experience on the day that Augie goes off to school wearing his Halloween costume, and Via spends the day home with her mom? Why did she spend the day at home? And then what was she planning to do with her mom? How did she feel when Augie ended up coming back from school? If anybody can talk about that a little bit, I'd like to hear what you thought about that. One of the specific sentences in there that I thought was interesting was when Via, Aubrey says it was sad. Yeah, I agree. Aubrey, why did you feel it was sad though? What happened there that was sad? I thought one sentence that really stood out to me was when Via spends the day at home, she mentions that her mom spent 2 weeks on Augie's costume because Halloween is really important to Augie. But she kind of slips in that her mom never spends that amount of time on her own costume. Why do you think she brought that up? Why do you think she mentioned that? Let's see. Evan is listening to the audiobook, and you listen until part 6 because you don't have the book. That's fine, Evan. I think you're a little bit ahead of everybody else, but that's totally fine. April's telling us about Halloween and what her plans are for Halloween. That's awesome. Thank you, April. So, yeah, Ian says, yeah, Via's pretty sad because Via's grandma had died a few years before, right before Halloween. And you're totally right, Ian. So she's kind of got her mind on this and she's feeling upset. And Augie just seems to be focused on his Halloween costume. So he goes off to school and she wants to spend the day home with her mom because it's her mom's mom that passed away a few years before. But then what happens? Augie actually comes back from school that day because he got upset when he overheard people talking about him. What does that do to Via's day when she's home with her mom? Yeah, so she kind of starts to make her own plans for the day, and then Augie coming home kind of ruins her plans for the day. But does she get mad at her brother? Is she kind of upset about it? Yeah, Ian says it kind of ruins her day. She starts to plan out this day with her mom that she thinks is going to be kind of a special day. They're going to watch some movies together. While she's kind of sad, that seems a little bit exciting. But then Augie comes home and their mom's attention totally switches to her little brother. That's kind of a sad thing. I agree with you guys that are saying that. It does kind of ruin her day. One of the things I like about Via, though, is that she doesn't really get angry at her little brother. She kind of knows that he's in a tough situation and she's actually worried about him. She goes and talks to him and tries to find out why he's at home, like what he's upset about. If you all remember the precept from the end of the first section, when Augie's teacher says, if you have the choice between being right and being kind, choose kind. Do you feel that that applies to this situation? Did Via choose to be right or did she choose to be kind? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that if you have any thoughts about it. If anybody wants to write and talk about that, that'd be awesome. But after Via's section, yeah, Paige says that she's choosing to be kind there. I agree, Paige. You know, one might say that, oh, Evan feels that she's choosing to be right. Well, all right. If either of you want to jump in and explain more why you feel that she's choosing to be right or choosing to be kind, I'd like to hear more. Yeah, so she kind of was going to have a special day with her mom. And then Augie comes home and her mom's attention just switches back to Augie. Somebody might, argue, hey, that's like, it was supposed to be her day in a way. Haley says she's choosing to be kind. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think I agree that she's choosing to be kind. She's very sweet to her brother and she's very understanding of him, even though he kind of ruined her day a little bit. It's very kind of her, but she's always sort of looked after her brother. She even talks about briefly that even though he's always had all these surgeries and he's had all these things go on in his life, that he's like very strong and he still tries to keep on doing the things that he wants to do. She chooses to be kind to him, even though maybe, we wouldn't blame her if she felt mad at him. Okay, so after Via's section ends, the next section is Summer. I'd like to hear you guys talk about Summer a little bit. What do you think of Summer? Why do you think the author chose to have a section, be focused on Summer? The first two sections are Augie and then his sister. But now we jump to this other person at school who is, I think it's an interesting choice. So what kind of a person is Summer and how did you guys feel about her? Evan says she's nice. I totally agree. What do you think, Evan, about her having Augie over to her house? Why do you think she does that? Benjamin says, I think Summer is kind and caring. I totally agree. Aubrey says, I like Via. Yeah, I like Via and Summer a lot in this book. I like Augie too. All three of these people are good people. But yeah, I think Via is a good big sister. And I think, yeah, I agree with Benjamin. I think Summer is very kind and caring. Yeah, so why do you guys think that Summer had Augie come over to her house and work on this project with her? Do you think she just feels sorry for him? Do you think she wants to be his friend? Why do you think she's doing this? Aubrey says, me too. Yep. I think we can all agree on these characters. They're pretty cool. Yes, I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on Summer having him over. Yeah, so Ian says the two of them are becoming really good friends. Jordan feels that Summer was being a good person and a friend. And Paige asks, what's to make him her friend? Oh, probably wants to make him her friend. Yeah, Summer's pretty cool like that. Evan says, because she understands Augie has no friends, so she makes herself his friend. Yeah, and Benjamin says, because nobody else liked August. And April says, I'm listening to how people talk about Summer and Via, and now I feel like they're twins. Yeah, they're both pretty nice. Awesome. Yeah, so then Summer's section of this book is not super long. We read through Summer's section. It is, I'm trying to see where it ended here. Yeah, so Summer's whole section of the book is like 13 pages long, which is a pretty big change from the first two sections. Augie's section was long, and then Via's section was also longer. And then Summer's is only 13 pages, but we get to see, you know, what kind of person Summer is and like what her viewpoints on Augie are. But then part 4, this section we jumped into Jack Will. And we get to see his viewpoint for about 20 pages in this section. But in that section, we kind of change, when we change viewpoint, we kind of go back again. And now we start to see things from Jack's viewpoint a little bit. So we went through like the whole start of the school year with Augie. Then we get to see things from Via's viewpoint. And then we get to see briefly some of Summer's viewpoint. And now we go back again and we see some of these beginning things from Jack's viewpoint. Like right towards the beginning here, he talks about his parents getting this call from Mr. Tushman in August. And kind of, you know, it's kind of weird that they want him to go talk to this kid that he's never met. But he sort of gets to explain his viewpoints. He gets to kind of talk about what it was like to meet Augie. You know, why he changed his mind and decided to meet him and try to be friendly with him. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about Jack. Jack, in the Augie section, said something pretty mean, and Augie was a little bit heartbroken. You know, he thought he was making good friends with this person, and then he accidentally overheard Jack say something pretty mean. But now we get to start seeing things from Jack's viewpoint. Were you guys mad at Jack for what he did? Also, do you feel different about Jack now that you're reading his part? Yeah, Evan jumps in and says, Julian is the mean guy. Yep, I agree. Julian is kind of a jerk. At the beginning of the Q&A box this week, Ian says, Julian really deserved that. Yeah, at the end of the section, Jack punches Julian. Jordan says, I think he was just saying that stuff to impress them. I was originally really mad at him though. So I think that's one of the interesting things about getting to read this book from different people's viewpoints. When you first hear Jack say these things, you know, it's really mean and you don't like Jack as much. But now you kind of get to see things from Jack's perspective. And like Jordan says, it's kind of clear that Jack was trying to maybe be cool or trying to impress Julian and these other guys a little bit. Benjamin says, I was somewhat sad because he kind of broke a friendship. I totally agree. And Ian says, a tiny little bit, but I felt sorry for him. You felt sorry for Jack too? Yeah. Evan says, Julian's a jerk. Aubrey says, boo, Julian. Benjamin says, Julian deserved the punch. August is not a freak. I agree. I think one of the lessons that this book might be trying to teach here, and let me know if you agree or not, but there's this idea of empathy which is being able to sort of feel what other people are feeling, or sort of understand what other people are feeling and what they're going through, and maybe why they do the things that they do. This book has you see some things from the outside, like we see Jack do something pretty mean from Augie's viewpoint. But then we switch over to Jack's viewpoint, and I think we start to maybe see or understand him a little bit better. Shanna says, I don't care what Jack said. I have done the exact same thing to impress someone when I wanted more friends. Boo, Julian. Augie is perfect the way he is. Ian says, don't judge someone by their looks. Yeah, so Shanna, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really, good point. That's a really interesting thing to say, that I think if we look at it, we all may have been there at some point. I know I've been there. We all sometimes say things that maybe we're trying to impress somebody else, or we're trying to look cool or sound cool. And sometimes we regret those things that we said afterward. Do you guys feel that Jack regretted what he said? If so, why do you feel that he regretted it? Yeah, Ian says, don't judge someone by their looks. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover. Aubrey also says, Julian deserved that punch. Paige says, my camp word for this week is also empathy. Oh, that's awesome, Paige. Yeah, Evan says, Julian said something mean. That's what I meant with jerk. I think what you guys are saying is, I understand what everybody's saying. They kind of understand where Jack came from by punching Julian. Yeah, Julian's kind of a jerk. But do we feel that actually punching him was violence really the answer here? Maybe, we get why he did it. But was there a better solution also? Another question for you guys. What else do you think Jack could have done? Hearing Julian talk about switching partners and, saying you don't have to be friends with that freak if you don't want to. Bam, he punches him right in the mouth. Ian says that Jack has realized that August is actually a really cool kid. Yeah. Benjamin says, yes, he regretted it because August was upset and didn't hang out with him anymore. Yeah, he started to figure out. At first, he's not really sure why Augie's kind of like not hanging out with him anymore. But then through friends, Augie gives a bit of a clue, and Jack figures out, he puts it together. He goes, oh, Augie overheard what I said, and he feels pretty bad about it. Shanna says, yeah, Jack so regretted it because Augie wouldn't talk to him except for the occasional hi. Yeah, everyone starts out kind of thinking, because of the way Augie looks, they're kind of scared. Like in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, they talk about the cheese touch a little bit. They kind of feel like, if, is this thing that Augie has, can it spread to other people? Maybe I shouldn't be friends with him. I shouldn't shake hands with him. I shouldn't come close to him. Maybe I'll start to look weird too. I think these kids know deep down that that's probably not possible. But the thing about, fear and people that look different from you, and when everybody around you is acting a certain way, it can be kind of hard to try to, stand apart from that, to kind of be true to what you really know. Even though Jack's a pretty cool guy, in a moment of weakness, he kind of said some mean things to try to be cool, like Julian and the other cool kids. It takes some hard work. It takes some real strength to be able to separate yourself out from like what everybody's doing or what the cool kids are saying, and do what you really know is the right thing. The word for that is integrity. Integrity means like being true to who you are, kind of being, you keep what you know whole and unbroken, and don't go along with what everybody else is saying. while Jack kind of was not cool for a little bit in terms of not being a good friend, do you feel that he's going to make up for it? Do you think that he and Augie can be friends again? What might need to happen for them to be friends again? Benjamin says, yeah, thinks that they can be friends again. Ian says yes. Benjamin, Ian, what do you guys think that Jack needs to do? Evan says, yeah. Oh, about the earlier question, Shannon says, violence is not always the answer. I would have just walked away and ignored him. It might not have worked, so I might have yelled at him and said, like, what is wrong with you? Can't you tell that I like August? If you would ignore what he looks like and just get to know him, you might actually like him. Now leave me alone or I will report you for stalking me. Yeah, Shanna, that would be acting with integrity. Evan says he thinks Jack should do an apology. Yeah, Benjamin says for that to happen, Jack will have to apologize. Aubrey says apologize. Everybody's chiming in. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what Jack did was not cool, but do we all think that he can come back from that? I think I agree with you guys. I think if he apologizes and explains himself, he could start to kind of repair their friendship. I think we probably all agree Jack is a good guy deep down. Not even deep down, Jack's a pretty good guy that made a mistake. But I also want us to turn now for a little bit to Julian. Everybody kind of agrees that they don't like Julian. And a lot of you even said that you feel that he deserved that punch in the mouth. Well, talking about empathy, the ability to sort of see what other people are going through, do any of you think you might understand or even like Julian by the end of this book? I know some of you might immediately be thinking, no. Oh yeah, Ian said no. Well, that'll be interesting. The idea of trying to understand what other people are going through and why they're doing what they're doing. I would advise you in the next sections of the book to maybe have an open mind about that, to try to maybe understand even the people that we don't like in the book, try to guess why are they doing what they're doing. Is Julian evil? Is he a monster? I don't think so. I think he's another kid. Why is Julian acting the way he is? Could even Julian maybe change and improve? Shannon says, we learned about bully prevention in my scouting group last week and the week before, so I know what integrity is. That's awesome, Shannon. That's very cool. Ian says, maybe, just maybe, about Julian. Aubrey says, no. Well, Aubrey, I think it'll be interesting. I think we should keep an eye on Julian. Let's see if we can try to understand him better by the end of the book and see if it changes our viewpoint on him at all. Okay, so to answer the question some of you had, Jordan says, no way, Jose, about Julian. All right. But Shanna says, I think Julian can change. We'll have to see. Okay, so for this, this week, we read up to right after the punch. The punch ends, and the next chunk, we're all starting at the chunk this week called detention. I know that in different people's versions of the book, that's probably on different pages, but detention is where we're starting. And we're gonna read all the way to part 6, which is Augie again, okay? So whatever page of the book or version of the book that you're using, we're starting with detention and we're going to Augie, but we're not starting that Augie section again yet. Oh, good. April says, my dad just got the book. I have it for 21 days because it's a library book. Awesome. It means you have it for 3 weeks. I think we'll be finishing it in 3 weeks. That's probably perfect. So yes, so read through the end of part 5. And your other task this week is to try to learn some words in the dictionary. If you have a big paper dictionary at home, you can try flipping through that and using that. If you don't have a big paper dictionary at home, you can go online. You can go to the Longman Learner's Dictionary. You can find other basic dictionaries online. But I want everybody to try to learn a few words and increase your vocabulary. Learn some new words that you didn't know before. And if you like, write them down. I would love at the start of next week for everybody to be able to share some of the words that they learned. You could write them down on a sheet of paper, bring them in and say, here's the words that I learned. I would love that. We'll all share them. We'll compare notes. We'll see if we are all increasing our vocabularies. A few questions here before we end off. Shanna says, is there a sequel to Wonder? Yeah, there's kind of a sequel. I haven't read it, but R.J. Palacio did write another chunk that is from a few more characters. I think you, from what I know about it, I think you get to see things. I don't think it goes over the exact same story again, but you get to see things from a few new angles you haven't seen before. I think it's maybe in that chunk, that second book that was published. I think Julian is one of the viewpoint characters. So that's interesting. And Haley asks, is the way that Augie looks real from the movie? I think the disabilities that Augie has, I think they're based on real life things that real people do experience. So the way that Augie looks in the movie version is based on that. The book is fiction. There's not a real Augie in real life. There's not a real person who has these exact disabilities. So the way that they describe in the book and the way that he looks for the movie is a made up fictional version based on real disabilities that real people do have. Aubrey says, I have a lot of dictionaries. Awesome, good. And April says, I just read some where I left off. Awesome, yeah, you guys can get started today or read it through the rest of the week. Totally fine. Milo asks, what are we reading to? Okay, one more time. So we're starting, Milo, where it says detention, and we're reading all the way to part 6. Don't read this part yet, unless you guys have already finished the book or read ahead. But the chunk we'll be discussing is from detention to part 6. I'm giving the information out that way because different people have different versions of the book. In my hardback, that is from page 155 to the end of page 204. And Paige says, can you find the movie Wonder on Disney Plus? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what streaming services that might be on. So what is part 6 called? Part 6 is called August. It's another viewpoint section from Augie. So April says, is it okay if I read the whole book? Well, usually we just read the next section, but if you're gonna go ahead and read the whole book, I won't stop you if you're enjoying it. Okay, that's all we have time for today. We'll see you guys back tomorrow morning. We have some new classes starting tomorrow that we haven't had before. So check out the schedule. Feel free to sign up for those, and we'll see you then. Thanks for coming this week, guys. As we end off here, I'm just going to throw the, so week 4 assignment. One more time here. Read through page 204 of Wonder. This is the end of part 5. Justin, a new viewpoint character. End of part 5, beginning of part 6. And work on learning some words in the dictionary this week. I'll see you guys next time.